Don't be too proud of this podcast you've constructed. The ability to rank content is insignificant next to the power of an exceptional hot take.
It is hot takes time, and we have a hot take from the dearly departed, now forced ghost, Christian. We don't?
I couldn't get access to the email. Unless you can do it real quick. But I do have...
I like how I look at you.
And I was like...
so excited.
Unfortunately, the audience didn't see Amanda's face where I look at Amanda, and I'm like, we have his hot take, because you sent earlier, we had one
I
from
know.
Christian.
I
Your
saw
face,
it.
don't say it, please.
If you can look for it real quick, I do have a hot take.
Where is it? Is it at the Duel of the Ranks email?
It was at one point, but now it's on the Wix.
Okay. All right. Well,
My hot take is that, you know what, this one's gonna come guns a-blazing. So if you're not seated yet, you might want to take a seat.
Oh.
I'm tired of Anthony Daniels in Star Wars.
What?
Ooh.
Anthony Daniels specifically?
C3PO.
What do you have
specifically.
against this man?
Okay, maybe not Anthony Daniels. I'm tired of C3PO.
Oh, that's somewhat better. I mean, that
Somewhat
really is all
better.
his career is.
I
by the
know,
way. That's
but
actually him.
I would
but-
actually love the opportunity for Anthony Daniels to like play a different character, like a human
He
character.
does. In episode 2.
Where?
In the cantina when Obi-Wan is tracking down the changeling, or she's tracking him down after he cuts off her hand.
That's
there's a reaction
true.
shot of Anthony Daniels in there. He and Ahmed Best are actually both in that scene.
I will
Oh,
never,
wow.
yeah, I will never forget that, as that moment changed my life when I saw Anthony Daniels in the 2 seconds, and I was like, that's the best character in Star Wars right
Stop! No,
Pretty
you
good. 10
didn't.
out of 10.
No,
Showing his
I
face.
want
Beautiful.
Anthony Daniels to get kind of the Christopher Lloyd in Mandalorian season 3 treatment, where he like just gets to be his own like character, and then it's kind of like, I would love actually if all of the original Star Wars characters came back for completely different roles, like modern day Mark Hamill as like just a regular ass dude.
Mhm.
Like that feels so much more like a great Easter egg than being like, oh look, it's C3PO again.
Yeah.
I'm that comment was out of pocket. I think you've been canceled by everyone.
That's what I aim to do.
Yeah, some folks say if you got canceled, you did something right. But targeting Anthony Daniels, I think you done blasphemed yourself out of a good hot take
KG
here.
says blasphemy. Comments are just like, uh-oh.
Yeah. I
Uh-oh.
mean,
It's a bit hot.
I'm glad that you made friends with doors, because I think you could see yourself out to one of them.
Clever. Clever. Nice.
No, it's a hot take. I'm gonna disagree. I think honestly, he was a highlight for me. I'm like, wow, this is the first time that we've had a live action character in their live action self. I mean, Luke Skywalker was all CGI'd up or whatever. This is the first time that we've had a live action character from the original Star Wars trilogy in this show.
Ahmed Best.
No, but like as themselves. You could say Darth Vader technically, even though he's like a Force ghost, but I mean alive and kicking in these TV shows in the Mandalorian universe. I think C3PO is the
Do
first
you
one.
really think Anthony Daniels is in that costume?
Why wouldn't he be?
I think it's possible. I think it's also possible that he's not. So
He was
it's
alive
like-
and kicking pretty well at Star Wars Celebration a few months ago, so he was moving. The man danced. Like, he was doing his thing.
It's more than I can do. Yeah.
Brian, what do you think? Hot take? Agree? Disagree?
Disagree with her.
It's actually really funny because it's very similar to the hot take I wrote down, which was that I'm just kind of over cameos in general, and that I love C3PO, but when I saw him on screen, I did feel nothing, honestly. It was like, okay, like, yeah, I love Anthony Daniels, I love the character, but like, it's just like every line, I'm just waiting for them to for it to be a reference. And a lot of they did steal his first line of dialogue is stolen from Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
You don't need to see my identification. Like, it's just I just think some directors don't really understand R2 and 3PO. Like, I don't think J.J. Abrams understood R2, and just like recycling the same voice lines and stuff is just like cheap. And it's just like they should just recast Leia and have her in there if she's that important to the character.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. I will say that's for not the take though. The take is that C3PO should just be done in Star Wars. I'm saying I fully disagree with that. Now, in that scene, I was like, you sent a droid in? Like,
yeah, was it? And then doesn't one of the senators are like, he's just a droid, and Chopper's like,
A mere droid.
"Um,
What?
but it's to the point though. He is still like a translating droid, and
yeah,
I think-
you're a protocol droid. Like, what
Yeah.
authority do you have?
I do think that was a bit wild.
He's Leia's dog, essentially. Like,
Leia's like-
run this message over there.
She's like, this is super important. This person could go to jail for life.
Let me send my buddy.
Yeah, but you know, I can't make the elevator downstairs to.
Hey, I think it just speaks to 3PO's credentials and the efforts, the sacrifices he's made for the rebellion are going a long way. And I agree with the decision to trust him with sensitive, high-level information. He's come a long way since the Clone Wars.
A long way. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm disagreeing. I don't want to never see C3PO again. What do you think, Brian?
I would be okay with never seeing 3PO in particular, but if he's going to work in the story, if, just bring the right characters in that are going to work with the story, because the Heir to the Empire storyline is what they're building to, and I think they're going to need to eventually actually kind of address some of those questions and just recast the dang characters, man. There's so many good actors out there.
Yeah.
Sure, it's what Carrie Fisher would want. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, Alden Ehrenreich, I think, is a great Han Solo, despite the issues that movie has. And Donald Glover is like the best casting for Lando possible. Just like such a fan too. So I don't know. I think it's okay to use characters if they're, as long as they're not just kind of shoehorned in there for shock value.
Yeah.
At this point, it's not really surprising.
So you are okay with some reappearance of 3PO?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think we should melt him. I don't think we should give it.
All right.
Recycle his parts.
Well, with that, Amanda.
I got a bad feeling about this hot take.
Okay, I have the hot take from our dearly departed
Nice.
Christian. All right, so here's what he said. Wrote us an email. Said Ahsoka is better for the Star Wars franchise than Andor. Whoa. He said the fans must decide which direction Star Wars should go. In a world of finite resources, let's assume this choice has to be made. In light of Ahsoka's awesomeness and taking into account the awesomeness of Andor, where should the creators/producers put their focus? Should we get back to the grand space opera in classic Star Wars like Ahsoka, even if it means sacrificing critically acclaimed filming/acting/realism like we saw in Andor? Or should we explore the different tones like espionage in Andor, space westerns like The Mandalorian, horrors, comedies, and more? Is it even Star Wars anymore if we attempt to colonize the film industry by exploring every tone possible and slapping the classic Star Wars on it? Is it irresponsible or simply unlocked potential? Does it lose its identity or enrich it? Is it the dark side of tempting a cash grab for us to kill it if you have to? Or is it a selfless promise of prosperity for the fandom? The fans and creators must choose. What say you? In the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Maybe we can sustain both, but there's no fun in debate there.
Wow. Christian, thank you so much for writing in with that. That is a great, that should be published in the New York Times.
Yeah. What I was about to say, like that sounds like an article. That was great stuff, Christian. Thank you for sending it in. Personally, I really enjoy all of the different tones.
Yeah, it worked. Is he kind of saying that then Andor is the kind of more traditional route because it didn't have Force, it didn't have
No, I don't think he was
lightsabers.
saying that at all. I think he was saying that, yeah, they have to decide where it should go. And again, Ahsoka's fun, Andor's very different, but they're two greatly different tones. And
True.
he's
Yeah.
just like he's saying, at what point do you just create a new story and let Star Wars be Star Wars, go one singular direction with
Mm.
one tone, or is it better to go all of these different directions? In which case, you have a variety of what really is Star Wars now. You have horror Star Wars, you have sci-fi Star Wars, you have comedy Star Wars, and that's where we exist. And I guess the argument from the business case, is it cheapening the IP or is it strengthening it? Is it better to go these different directions where you should let it like when you say Lord of the Rings, there's a tone, there's a feeling. You don't
There's
really
a quality
yeah,
too.
and you don't get that with Star Wars.
Mhm.
It's everywhere. Is that better or worse for the fandom and really the IP as a whole?
It's a great question. I think that Star Wars is meant to be fun. It's a bit more welcoming than like Lord of the Rings is, say. Maybe that's just because I haven't read the books.
It is more fun than the books.
Okay.
I have read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Two Towers is a
So like
doozy.
Star Wars is a bit more aimed at like youth and kind of appeals to all ages. And I think that by expanding the IP to include different tones gives a wider net for fans to find what they love about it. And I love that Star Wars fans have been popping up in these new shows. Like, I have friends that had never watched Star Wars before, but they watched The Mandalorian and they loved it because Grogu, Baby Yoda brought them into it, and that makes me so excited. Like, I know there's a certain section of fans that are like, "Well, you're not a real Star Wars fan." If you like Star Wars, you're a real Star Wars fan. That's it. It doesn't matter if you've seen everything or nothing. Like, I am excited to welcome whoever wants to talk and love Star Wars, like, into this fandom.
Oh, yeah, and, like, I have a toddler who's like, I can't just show Star Wars to
Yeah.
without, like, scarring him from certain movies and scenes, but they have, like, a kids show, like, with CGI and all that stuff, and we put that on, and it's like it's not Tales of the Jedi, maybe that is what it is. I
The
don't know.
Young Jedi Adventures.
That's
I
something
think.
like
Yeah.
it, and I put that on, and he's just like was going around telling everyone, he's like, "I watched Star Wars today," and so excited, and I'm like, "Alright, maybe I would have agreed with you before, but the fact that it brings this kid so much joy, what I think it is now, and we're at the point where we can say, well, what's your Star Wars, right? Are you an OG that just loves the original 3 and that's all that exists to you? Or are you like me and you're like, fight me, the prequels are the best? Or are you like Amanda, you came into it newer and you're like, Rebels and The Last Jedi break all that stuff from before. This is what like that's what's I love about Star Wars is you can pick what you like and rock with that. Just because there's new content you don't love doesn't mean the other stuff now sucks.
Yeah.
So, no, I like the variety a lot. I wouldn't like it in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think it's very different when you have a singular author who set a specific tone, and then
Mhm.
people come in, like JD Payne and Patrick McKay, where they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this new thing that he never wrote," and like,
Mm.
that's just
And
tough.
especially with, like, Tolkien's legacy as far as, like, he and his estate have been like, "You can't work with any of this stuff, you can only have just this little bit." They've been very protective of that legacy where Lucas has been happy to kind of
Oh, yeah.
give his input and consult on different projects and
Yes,
all of that.
and that's the difference. The world of Tolkien is when his son died, they've been a lot more loose about protecting that storyline. Whereas, like, George Lucas, like, he's like, "Let the community make stuff." Like, there was, like, a lot
Oh
more
yeah.
copyright rules pre-Disney, and
Mhm.
people were making fan films left and right, and that's the fun like, the community is what
Yeah, they
made
support
Star
'em.
Wars.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
very, very different, like, where stories come in from fans, and then it gets turned into, like, an actual movie or show. So,
Mhm.
no, very different there.
Yeah. What say
Yeah.
you, Brian?
No, I think the way I kind of interpreted that kind of question in my mind is like very specific kind of shows, like shows made with a very specific vision or shows that kind of appeal to a mass audience. I think The Force Awakens is like the best example of like mass appeal media, and that's why that movie grew like wildfire. It was fun, kind of popcorny, you know. Everyone kind of agrees, kind of a cliched storyline and whatnot. I'm not here to bash on Force Awakens at all.
My
Love that
favorite Star Wars
movie.
movie.
It's fun. Yeah, it's a fun ride. One of the best movie experiences of my life. But I think I would easily take a show like Andor over a show like Ahsoka, even if it's like, you know, unimportant characters and stuff that's, you know, very isolated storylines, which it's not. Andor absolutely does build into the larger show, you know, or to the larger play of things, the larger Shakespearean arc that's happening. But it also has like a very specific vision for each 3-episode arc does, and they're all so unique and incredible and really well done. And I think George Lucas was also kind of a fan of more specific tones, right? Like I think the shift from episodes 1 to 2 is the best example. Like I love how Attack of the Clones turned into this like noir thriller kind of seedy underbelly of Coruscant thing, and they're tracking down bounty hunters across the galaxy and sneaking around caves.
Yeah.
I think that's something that has always been a core of, like, even between episodes 4 and 5, there's a pretty dramatic tone shift, honestly. But they're both still unique, distinctly Star Wars because of the characters and the world and the themes between them. And I think Andor does them really well. And so what I'm saying is that you can do Star Wars perfectly well, but that doesn't mean that you've betrayed it by altering its chemistry a little bit.
And going off of that, I want to completely change one of my takes in the past. I don't think, I actually think it was really good that Anakin Skywalker in episode 2 was unbelievably cringy with Padme. That sounds weird. Everyone's like, oh, that was cringy. He seems super scary. Padme should be running away. Here's my thing. Actually, going back to it, I think that scene was perfect. That fireside cringy scene was so perfect for those two characters, and I finally can appreciate it now. All right. You have Anakin Skywalker, who witnessed he's witnessed his mother passing. He's gone through these traumatic events, and his whole life he's been trying to live up to someone else's standards when he knows he's more. In his head, he knows he's superior in some way, shape, or form than all these people, but he tries to tone it down, and he really just wants the approval of those above him, but he never really gets it, and he always gets treated like a pissant. Right? And so he goes through all these things, and he just wishes, oh, if this one thing would have been different, I could have saved her. But he caves into his aggression and everything else. And you have Padme, who's got the biggest heart in the world, who in a normal situation should probably see this guy's a creepy person, but she's known him for years. And so even if it's unlimited capacity, and she sees this bird with a hurt wing who also is
I can
hot.
fix him.
Yeah. And it's I can make this better. He's hurting. And you got this guy at this incredibly vulnerable moment where, yeah, he probably should be scary because he will hurt you, as he does in episode 3. This dude has the ability. And so, he's at this crazy point, a literal crazy point, and he acts insane around her. And she's bought in, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? And now, yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, she's just is bought into it. So I don't know, everything you're saying about Attack of the Clones, that scene is executed perfectly, and it gets way too much hate.
It does, absolutely. And I think really overall, there's at worst one or two kind of awkward moments or scenes in that movie, and I think I agree that they could be interpreted as foreshadowing, you're supposed to feel oh, this is how Darth Vader would hit on a girl. Of course, that's how Darth Vader would hit on a girl.
Yeah.
Well, and never talked to a girl in his life.
I remember seeing someone on TikTok call out that Hayden Christensen's delivery of his lines in the prequel trilogy does match up really well to Darth Vader's voice and the way that the cadence in which he speaks in the original trilogy, because his word choice and delivery is a little awkward, but when you think about what Vader talks and the way that he emphasizes certain points,
Yeah, like very William Shatner. I don't
Yeah.
know. Overall, and it was funny because again, being a 90s baby, I didn't know the world hated him until I was like 14, and I'm like, we all love these, and they're like, we hate him, and I was like, oh, whoa, I didn't know that. Like the internet hates this guy. But I'll just say, like, everyone's like, oh, he was just so like vanilla and had no emotion and seemed like weird. I'm like, really? Like, I thought this dude was full of emotion in those 2 movies. I mean, think about that scene with Padme's ruminations. Just like he's not saying a thing. You just feel it.
You
His mom
feel
dies.
it.
You
Whole
feel it.
story.
He's cringy with Padme. You feel it.
Yeah.
And I
He's
honestly,
sweet with her in Revenge of the Sith.
yeah. I mean, I will say there's no saving the I hate sand line for me. Still, maybe another 10 years that'll change. But I don't
That's
know.
on George.
Hayden Christensen, every time you bring him back, even now in Ahsoka, I'm just like, it brings me so much joy. Like, that is Darth Vader. That is Anakin Skywalker.
Mhm.
And ultimately, he is, if nothing else for people, he makes this show worth watching. And there's a lot more in this show that makes it worth watching. So, yeah, very enjoyable. With that, do we have anything else to say about this episode of Ahsoka?
Oh, I had to call out that at the end of this episode, and Thrawn calls back all of his night troopers and all that stuff. Shin is there by herself with Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine. And Ahsoka does the thing that I love in Star Wars, which is she extends her hand and she is like, I can help you. I
Oh, yeah.
love when Star Wars is extending a hand to the opposite side and asking them to come join us. But of course, Shin runs away.
Like a coward. I would love to know what's going on in her mind. And like that makes Shin, though, that action makes Shin a more interesting character. Like, of
Yeah,
course,
what does she think she's gonna be like Thrawn's like second hand now? Like she
Kind of enforcer, an assassin.
yeah, but she hasn't even like proven herself.
Yeah, she hasn't killed anyone.
She hasn't done anything yet. But I don't know.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I just had to call out the
They
reach
killed a
out
lot of
was
people
is
in
one of my
that
favorite parts.
opening episode.
Yeah,
Oh,
they did.
that's true.
So
That is
she's-
She can go through some rebels.
Yeah, she can go through some rebs. That's about it. So, all right. Well, with that, that's this episode.
Wait.
There's more.
I have forgotten to bring up bingo for
There
the
is
last couple
more.
episodes.
Mm.
So I owe you guys some bingo numbers. I think the last one we did was episode 4. No, episode 5 we did. There was live action Clone Wars flashbacks. I know we did that one.
A lot has happened. Why don't we just call it next week? You've
Should
got
we
the
call them
numbers.
all next week?
For
Just
the
call 'em.
finale.
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
finale. Let's just call them
Yeah,
all.
we'll do
Let's
that.
call them all. I'm sure
One
someone's
more
got a
week.
bingo. We've got a few of those, I think, by now. So, all right. With that, that's this week's episode of Duel the Ranks. If you liked listening to Brian, myself, and Amanda, and you want more stuff, well, guess what? There's a website called dueltheranks.com. Go listen to it. We've got more content there. Otherwise, we will see you next week for the finale of Ahsoka. We're really excited to talk about it. I'm going to be virtual. You're going to be virtual. Brian's going to be virtual. We'll have a virtual party. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be a whole lot of fun to break that down. And once we're done with that, guess what? We're going back to the Clone Wars. So KG, strap up for more content. You got to watch the animated show because it's about to get hot in it. So, all right, that's this week. We'll see you next one.